Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're hanging out with us today. Have you ever wondered why the idea of making money while you sleep sounds like, well, the ultimate dream, but the actual physical process of building it feels like an absolute nightmare of boredom? Today, we're going to explore the hidden psychology behind our financial struggles. We're looking way past your bank accounts and digging deep into the cognitive patterns that, honestly, most people completely ignore. So get ready, because what we uncover today might literally change how you view your own mind. Okay, let's dive into this. It's a question that frustrates so many ambitious people, right? I mean, you might spend hours watching creators talk about financial freedom. You picture the life you could have, the stress that would just totally evaporate. Yet, when it actually comes time to sit down and do the repetitive, slow work of investing or building a business system, your mind suddenly just goes completely quiet. You suddenly feel this overwhelming urge to do literally anything else. Just take a look at this. There is a staggering, painful dissonance between our dream and our reality. We picture wealth, freedom, and continuous growth. It's vibrant, it's exciting. But when you actually sit down to build that dream, boom, you're hit with stress, mind-numbing boredom, and before you know it, you're scrolling through social media or doing pointless, busy work. You end up trading the long-term goal for a quick, cheap sense of achievement. So why does this happen? Well, I really want this next realization to sink in for you. You aren't being lazy. Your mind isn't secretly working against you out of spite. What's actually happening is that your brain is physically struggling to process a concept it was never, ever designed to handle. You are operating on ancient survival wiring. And that ancient biology, it's quietly building a massive hidden barrier between you and the wealth you want to create. Section 2, Diagnosing the Brain's Survival Scripts. Here is where we look past the money and deep into your cognitive patterns. To truly understand why passive income feels so incredibly alien to our biology, we gotta recognize that our brains are fundamentally wired for instant gratification. Think about it. For our ancestors, survival depended on the immediate find, the food, the shelter, the safety they could lock down today. Now, compare that to modern wealth. When you work a traditional job, you get a paycheck. There is a clear, immediate link between your effort and your reward. But passive wealth, it relies on delayed returns. It completely breaks our biological expectation of an instant payoff. And this brilliantly illustrates the crux of the entire problem. It all comes down to one simple number: 0. Passive income, especially in those early stages, often requires a massive amount of upfront effort with absolutely zero visible return. Without that quick dopamine feedback loop of a traditional paycheck, your brain actually flags the task as boring or even completely useless. It associates delayed rewards with a dangerous waste of precious energy. So what does it do? It tries to escape to activities that offer a faster hit of satisfaction. This biological mismatch leads us right into a highly deceptive trap. I call it the mental stimulation trap. Here's how it plays out. First, you vividly imagine your future success. In response, your brain gets tricked and releases these little hits of satisfaction as if you've already achieved it. Because that thought feels so incredibly good, your internal urgency to do the actual, boring work just drops. And ultimately, you take absolutely no action. Smart people fall into this loop of productive overthinking all the time. They analyze until their cognitive bandwidth is totally drained, mistaking thinking about wealth for actual progress. Which brings us to a really profound realization. You become addicted to the potential of who you could be rather than the effort of who you are right now. Let that sink in for a second. Your reality remains exactly the same because the mental stimulation has tricked you into feeling accomplished. You feel like you've moved the needle just because you felt the rush of the idea. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it highlights another major barrier: cognitive rigidity. See, long-term compounding requires handling complexity and nuance, and frankly, the brain finds that exhausting. So it resorts to low IQ, black and white thinking. It sees a financial opportunity only in the extremes. It's either a guaranteed overnight miracle or it's a complete scam. There is simply no in-between for a rigid mind. The expectation for a quick reward is absolutely massive compared to the tiny, slow start of compounding. Because long-term compounding often shows almost no growth for the first few years, the brain interprets this lack of immediate results as a flat-out failure. It genuinely struggles to see the nonlinear path where small actions today lead to massive results a decade later. So when the numbers aren't moving fast enough to trigger a reward, your rigid brain just tells you to quit. Now, beyond our basic biology, our ability to build wealth is heavily dictated by our childhood. Let's talk about survival independence. If you were a child who had to grow up entirely too fast, realizing early on that you had to be the responsible one, well, this is for you. Your nervous system adapted to pressure. You learned that you could only trust what you could handle yourself and what you could see immediately. You linked safety exclusively with active struggle and intense self-reliance. And because of that childhood adaptation, look at what happens in adulthood. You experience uneasy rest. That means feeling guilty, hyper-alert, or fundamentally unsafe if you aren't actively sweating for every single dollar. To an overactive nervous system, the whole idea of money making money feels incredibly dangerous because you aren't physically doing the work. This makes it super difficult to reach a state of safe dependence where you can actually trust a passive system to work for you. For someone who grew up in instability, depending on a system you can't physically control just feels terrifying. Let's move to the next concept and see how this builds into another huge psychological hurdle: hedonic adaptation. Basically, this is the tendency for our brains to get used to any level of pleasure until it no longer feels rewarding. And let's be real, we are heavily conditioned by digital platforms to constantly crave newness and variable rewards. Passive income, on the other hand, is repetitive. It's predictable. It is the exact opposite of a dopamine-fueled slot machine. There is a literal war for your attention right now. Your brain dedicates massive bandwidth to dopamine-fueled new projects, social media notifications, or quick spending sprees, leaving only a tiny fraction of focus for steady investment growth. When your investments grow by a small, steady percentage, it doesn't give you a rush. Your brain identifies this steady growth as mere background noise and totally loses interest. Without high emotional intelligence, your craving for a new dopamine hit will actually cause you to completely sabotage your long-term plans, just to feel a spark of excitement. Finally, we face identity misalignment. Your brain is a survival tool designed to resist any action that doesn't match how you see yourself. If you secretly believe you are someone who works hard for their money or that wealth is for other people, your mind will subconsciously sabotage your passive systems. You might overspend or intentionally miss opportunities because your nervous system is desperately trying to bring your reality back in line with your old, comfortable identity of the hustle. Building passive income requires you to value time over labor, and if your identity resists that, wealth is always going to feel like a threat. Section 3, the cure: rewiring your wealth identity. Recognizing these patterns doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're building the self-awareness needed to break the cycle. If you've recognized any of these patterns in yourself today, I really want to reassure you, you are not broken. You are not incapable of wealth. You are simply using the survival scripts you are handed. But by analyzing them today, you're already developing the self-awareness needed to break the cycle. Once you align your identity with your goals and truly learn to tolerate the boredom of steady growth, your future becomes utterly unstoppable. Awareness is always the first step, because once you start seeing these patterns, you can never unsee them. And trust me, when you master your mind, the money part actually becomes the easy part. So the crucial point is this: healing doesn't mean changing your brain's biology. It means learning to act even when your mind is screaming for a quick reward. True financial progress requires us to actively override our most ancient biological impulses. It's about feeling that massive urge to quit because it's boring and choosing to stay the course anyway. I want to leave you with this provocative question. Will you let your ancient brain choose the path of least resistance, or are you ready to tolerate the boredom of building true wealth? The choice is entirely up to you now that you can see the hidden barriers. If you want to keep understanding the hidden psychology behind human behavior, the deep truths that most people simply ignore, make sure to hit subscribe. Because once you understand the world within, you start noticing everything else you've been missing. Thank you so much for learning with me today.